You can't fight progress, Karen smirked as she drowned my family's 150-year-old well in concrete. She thought she'd won like progress was just another HOA rule she could wave around on her clipboard. What she didn't know what nobody expected was that progress, this time, was the judge who'd end up signing her arrest warrant. The gurgle from that old artesian spring still echoes in my head, especially the day I stood there in my funeral suit, dirt still on my shoes from burying my dad. You want to talk about insult on top of grief? Try coming home from a cemetery and finding a concrete truck in your yard courtesy of your local HOA tyrant. See, Karen Whitfield strutted down the street like some sort of peacock, her HOA clipboard a scepter, ready to smite anyone for wildflowers or laughter a little too loud. She saw me in mourning and thought she had a free pass. Destroy the well, erase the last obstacle to her shady land, deal easy as that. But that well wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a federally protected aquifer, tied to every permit for her whole development. Karen's progress was really just environmental fraud, plain and simply $200,000 embezzlement I'd been untangling for years. And when I finally called the EPA, her empire fell like a house of cards. But let me back up a second, tell you how I even got to this point. Name's Jake Morrison, 52. Never wanted to be a warrior, just a son, a caretaker, maybe a decent tomato grower if the weather played nice. My family's owned this 5-acre slice of Millbrook Estates since the 1950s, before HOAs, before the word subdivision meant anything out here. My granddad got it back when all you could see was farmland and sky, and the original artesian well hand dug by a guy with more grit than since became the lifeblood of our land. Our old white farmhouse, wraparound porch sagging in just the right spots, vegetable gardens my grandmother planted herself, chicken coop that's seen more history than most people ever will, fruit trees that drop apples into your palm come September, wind chimes my mother hung 30 years ago, still tinkling every time a breeze rolls down from the hills. This place predates Millbrook Estates by 40 years. When the HOA built up around us in the 80s, we got grandfathered in. Legal as sunshine, protected by the county as a historic landmark. The neighborhood sprouted up, all their perfect lawns and identical mailboxes, but our property kept its soul. Then came Dad's stroke. 2 years of pills, doctor's appointments that always seemed to end with more bad news. We passed last month. I didn't just inherit the house. Apparently, I inherited a target on my back. Hugh Karen Whitfield, HOA president, full-time pain in the ass. Take every nightmare neighbor you ever had, slap a real estate license and a god complex on her, and give her a white BMW she parks sideways across 2 spaces. Yeah, that's Karen. Hair so perfect it looks photoshopped. Pearls that probably cost more than my truck. She lives in an $800,000 McMansion right by the entrance. The kind of place with more bathrooms than bedrooms and a chandelier that screams, "I'm better than you." Karen's famous for measuring grass height with an actual ruler. No Joe Kesh will write you up if your Halloween pumpkins last till November. So, I'm there, still hearing Dad's voice in the hall, and the notices start rolling in first. Unsightly agricultural structures. That's our chicken coop, by the way. Then, non-conforming landscaping, which means, apparently, my grandmother's garden was an eyesore. And finally, unauthorized water source, the same well that's been here since before Karen was born. Each violation, $500. $1,500 for the crime of not living in a beige box with a matching mailbox. Tucked into the last notice, Karen's signature in perfect blue ink. Time to join the 21st century or move somewhere more suitable. I should have seen it coming. A concrete truck. The smell of diesel. The churn of wet cement filling up a well that had survived wars, droughts, and 3 generations. Standing there, watching them erase my family's legacy, something inside me snapped. This wasn't about HOA rules. This was war. So, What do you do when someone kicks dirt on your father's grave by destroying the last piece of your family's history? If you're me, you call the authorities and start planning your revenge. First stop, city code enforcement. Guy behind the counter Steve looked like he'd rather be fishing. He squinted at his computer, muttered something about grandfathered in, shrugged, and said he'd file a complaint eventually. That's bureaucracy for you. Next, the cops. The officer barely looked up from his paperwork. Sounds civil, he said. You'll need a lawyer. But I'd spent 2 years fighting insurance companies for Dad's care. I knew how to play the long game. Meanwhile, Karen was playing her own. 2 days after the concrete incident, every Millbrook Estates homeowner got an email, health hazards in our neighborhood. Pictures of my place, red arrows pointing at the chicken coop, garden, the well gone now, thanks to Karen. She called an emergency HOA meeting, stoking fear about standing water and property values. Friday night, the community center was jam-packed 30 neighbors in a room built for 20, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, stale coffee in the air. Karen had a slideshow ready before and after shots, my place versus the perfect lawns next door. Folks nodded along, afraid to say a word. Then came my moment. I stood up, folder in hand. Excuse me, Karen, but I think you forgot something. The room went still. I read out the original HOA covenants. The real one, section 3.7. All pre-existing structures are grandfathered in perpetuity. Forever. I showed the 1952 deed our property came first, never signed up for the HOA. Karen sputtered about updated standards, but I interrupted, told everyone I'd file with the state attorney general that morning. And the kicker? The HOA hadn't properly registered with the county in 3 years. Karen's whole regime was illegal. The spell was broken. Neighbors started whispering. Karen's face went from suburban mom to fire engine red. Did she take it lying down? Not a chance. 3 days later, a courier brought a cease and desist letter from Whitfield, Morrison and Associates, her husband's law firm. Naturally. The letter accused me of harassment, defamatory accusations, malicious conduct. In other words, shut up or we'll drown you in legal fees. But here's the thing: after fighting with insurance companies, you learn that angry letters mean weak positions. I spent my evenings at the county courthouse, digging through public records. Turns out Karen's real estate license had been suspended 2 years ago for misrepresentation. She was still working to legally thrug her husband's firm, handling distressed sales. Properties that sold way under market value to buyers she found herself. Next up, a surprise safety inspection. Karen showed up with a city inspector, Dave, a buddy from the golf course. Dave started writing up violations left and right, but when I requested a real inspection, the legitimate city engineer wiped every single one off the list. Pro tip: always check your inspector's credentials. That's when I built my own website, millbrookhotruth.com. Nothing but facts, photos, timelines, every threatening email, every violation. 500 visitors in a week. Suddenly, neighbors were sharing the link. Local media started sniffing around. Karen's carefully crafted narrative was crumbling. So, she upped her game. Garden hose slashed, chicken coop gate left open, hens scattered everywhere. Anonymous calls to animal control about farm animals on residential land. I installed security cameras, caught teenagers sneaking around at 2 a.m. I confronted Karen. She feigned innocence, but one of those teens had a mom with a conscience. She called me furious. Karen had paid her son to prank the crazy neighbor. More parents came forward. Suddenly, Karen had an army turning against her. That's when the lawsuit landed a sheriff's deputy, $50,000 in damages for my website, malicious interference with neighborhood harmony. She wanted an injunction forcing me to sell my property and leave. My lawyer said it'd cost $25,000 just to defend myself. For a night, I almost broke out of my kitchen table, thinking about Dad, the smell of instant coffee and old house dust thick around me. Maybe I should give up. Maybe Karen was right. But then I remembered what mattered me: grandfather's hands building the coop, my grandmother's pride in her tomatoes, Dad's last words. Don't let them change what matters. Some neighbors supported me quietly. Others fell for Karen's propaganda. She started a petition drive to force me out, going door to door with that damn clipboard. But a note appeared on my windshield. Stay strong. You're not her first victim. I tracked down others: Margaret, forced to remove her solar panels; Bob, nearly bankrupted over his work truck; Sarah, garden destroyed after her husband died. All had been harassed. All had sold at a loss, though buyers Karen found. That's when the whole picture clicked. Karen's husband handled the distress sales, buying cheap, selling high, with Karen collecting commissions. This wasn't just HOA tyranny, it was organized fraud. We joined forces. No more fighting alone. The twist? My lawyer found the smoking gun. The original HOA charter had a clause about water rights. My well wasn't just grandfathered in, it was tied to the entire development's water supply. When Karen filled it in, she violated the contract with the regional water authority. One call, and 200 homes would lose their extra water rights. I could destroy Karen with a phone call, but also 199 innocent families. That weighed on me. I chose justice, not revenge. We gathered evidence: environmental law violations, fraud, witness statements, media coverage. Our team grew: an environmental lawyer, a forensic accountant, public records experts. The website turned into a hub for other victims. The county paper ran a front-page expose. Karen panicked, tried to bribe me $15,000 to drop it all and leave. I recorded everything. She sent a private investigator after me, filed bogus complaints, tried to plant dead rats on my property, caught her on camera. Pet store price tag still attached. Then her own board turned. A member started recording meetings, Karen admitting to the concrete sabotage, to hiding missing HOA funds. Her emergency plan? Dissolve the HOA, burn the whole thing down to escape oversight. The harassment escalated. Vandalism, threatening voicemails, anonymous letters. But we held strong. Then 2 men tried to sabotage my septic system, caught by my cameras, business cards in their dropped wallet, her husband's company. The final showdown: annual HOA meeting, over 100 residents, news cameras rolling. Karen strutted in, but her hands shook as she shuffled her papers. Tried to spin a slideshow of fake numbers until the state environmental agents walked in. Right behind them, the sheriff's deputies, my lawyer with a briefcase full of evidence. They arrested Karen Whitfield for environmental crimes, fraud, racketeering. I played the recording of her threatening me, then the board members' tape of her scheming. Margaret, Bob, Sarah all told their stories. The crowd, once silent, finally spoke up. The judge sentenced Karen to 18 months in federal prison, 5 years probation, $250,000 in restitution. Her husband's license revoked, their mansion sold to pay the fines. And Millbrook Estates started healing. The best part? 3 days of jackhammers, professional crews breaking up the concrete. When they finally reached the spring, water bubbled up clearer than ever. I installed a hand pump to match my granddad's, drew the first cup. Cold, clean, sweet, tasted like victory. We rewrote the HOA bylaws, set up real oversight, opened my garden for community use. The chicken coop is now a spot where neighborhood kids learn about farming, about history, about standing up for what's right. Now, every morning, I pour a cup of water from that well, toast the sunrise, and remind myself justice delayed isn't always justice denied. Our Clean Water Defense Fund helps families in 4 counties fight HOA abuse. My website became a resource for anyone standing up to a bully with a clipboard. Karen tried to bury my family's legacy under concrete. Instead, she built me a platform and showed a whole community what standing together looks like. So what about you? Ever tangled with a petty tyrant or an HOA from hell? Share your story in the comments. Let's make sure no one fights alone. Because in the end, bullies only win when good people stay silent. And around here, we're done staying silent.